Chairman, you can proceed.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call to order this virtual regular meeting of the Rehoboth Beach Planning Commission on Friday, July 9th, 2021, and it is 2 p.m. Will the secretary please call the roll?
People need to turn on their mics.
Certainly. Mr. Bryan.
I'm here.
Mr. Covington.
Here, and Mr. Chairman, I have a previous engagement at this afternoon, which requires I leave at 3:30. So I'm just going to quietly sign off when that time comes.
Mr. Allison.
Thank you.
Here.
Mr. Kaufman.
Present.
Ms. Matcha.
Here.
Mr. Strange.
Here.
Myself and Mr. Trunzo.
Wonderful. All the Planning Commission is here, so the meeting is now in order with a quorum of members present. The next item, verification of meeting notice. Ms. Womack?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
The agenda for the Planning Commission regular meeting was posted in City Hall and on the city portal on July 2nd and was sent out from the portal the same day. The agenda was amended and reposted in City Hall and on the city portal on July 8th and was resent out that same day. Public notice for public hearing of minor subdivision application number 0521-02 for the property located at 63, 65, and 67 Lake Avenue was posted in City Hall and on the city portal on June 18th. Notice was published in Cape Gazette on June 22nd and June 25th, Coast Press on June 30th, and Delaware State News on June 23rd and June 24th. Notification specific to this project was mailed out to owners of properties within 200 feet, and signage was posted on the property. That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Womack. We appreciate that. We will now move on to approval of minutes, and I will draw your attention to my editing error. The agenda says May 14th, 2021. Those are not the meeting minutes we're looking at. We're looking at last month, June 11, 2021. So sorry for that agenda error. Has anyone not had an opportunity to look at the meeting minutes? Any corrections or additions or other comments?
I have a comment. I noticed at page 2, number 1, there's an email from Mosh Ray opposition to rezoning at 440 Rehoboth Avenue. I think that should be 330. I don't know if that was what the person put in or not, but I think she was referring to 330 Rehoboth Avenue.
Mr.
Wonderful.
Mr. Covington, you are correct. I will make that change.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Womack. Anyone else? Could we have a motion to approve these meeting minutes then?
I move to approve the meeting minutes of June 11th.
As
amended.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ellison, Ms. Macha. Okay, so the motion is to approve the meeting minutes of June 11th, 2021 as amended. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Anyone not voting? Okay, so we have 8 votes for the meeting minutes approval. Thank you so much. The next item, 5, correspondence. Ms. Womack, we're back to you.
There was none.
Okay, thank you so much. Old business. So today we're going to have we're going to have 2 items of old business, the CDP presentation by our consultant, Ms. Pfeil, and then we're going to have a public hearing. I want to do one thing before that, though. People have asked me to read the list of folks who have signed up to speak today, just so folks know where they are in the order. And this may or may not have been amended, so I'm going to go with what I have now. I have Mr. Hal Dukes, Alexis Gaddy, Susan Crampton Davis. That's all I have on my list. I do see Mr. Perry. Maybe there was an addition? Ms. Womack?
Chair, there was the addition of Mr. Perry.
Wonderful. Thanks for confirming that. Okay, so that's the list in that order. Thanks so much. So today, as promised during May, we said we would come back to the Planning Commission in July with an update on the CDP. And for that, I'd like to thank Ms. Pfeil and introduce her and ask her to start.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
I just want to apologize if you hear any kind of pounding. I've got about 7 roofers that I'm trying to have them continue moving while I do this brief presentation. I think we're going to be okay. I just want to make sure that you are seeing the PowerPoint presentation.
Yep. Yes.
Great, thank you. So what we'd like to do is we promised we were coming back to give you an update of where we're at with the mapping. So I'm just going to go over a couple brief slides and you'll be able to see this in the future as well. Next slide. Okay. Are we on the second slide, just to be clear on the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the schedule, as you're aware, we're still on that final extension till 7/20/22, and we're still right on track with that new proposed schedule that we have. In this update, we wanted to let you know a couple of things that we have done in between. So every year, required by law and due July 1st, is an annual report given to the state on the CDP. The reporting period is for one period of time. That's between July 1st and June 30th. We just submitted the city's annual report to Office of State Planning Commission on June 28th. So you are within the requirement for the annual input. The annual reports for all the state planning issues for the governor can be found on this link. So it gives every year of every municipality and every county and state initiatives. So I think that's some interesting reading if you ever have a chance. We pull information from there. But I do want to let you know that there's really 2 purposes that you report back to the state. The one is accountability, that the implementations are moving forward and items are being addressed within your plan. And within that also is to report any kind of new trends or ask for assistance. But the third one is the information actually gets rolled up into the governor's report. So if municipalities pacify this document and do not put in some of the highlights or projects that they'd like to be able to consider in the governor's report, then you're not considered in that report. And I think it's very important that Rehoboth continues to maintain their standing to be included in this report. It shows intergovernmental coordination, and the state has a lot of resources and responsibilities within the municipal jurisdiction, as we're aware of. So within this 2020 annual report, I'm going to give you the highlights. The action items that you're going to see in the blue are items from the last CDP. So install wayfinding signs and uniform signage location. So on this item, phase 1 and 2 were completed. There's a multi-phase wayfinding sign improvement project. So we wanted the state to know that that has been worked on and the phasing is completed for those. So basically, we pulled the areas out of your CDP in blue and said, these are the areas we've worked on and this is what has been done. One of the original action items in the last CDP was the Canal Park, which we're very familiar with connecting by waterway to the Lewis and Rehoboth Canal. So as you're very familiar, the switchback boardwalk structure was completed the spring of 2021. And proposals are now being reviewed by the Board of Commissioners for taxi service to include eco tours. So that would be non-motorized or motorized water recreation, and kayak services, which would be non-motorized. So that's currently underway. The Board of Commissioners are reviewing proposals and information on those services. The next one is preparing a citywide storm management plan and obtain professional design assistance. So a stormwater utility feasibility study is underway in preparation for your stormwater management plan. And there was a completion of a storm sewer existing condition using the camera TV and the SLRAT, which is ultrasonic, inspection techniques to give a database planning maps. And then they recommend areas of immediate needs and future rehabs. And there's been multiple stormwater infrastructure projects have been completed and new projects were identified in the city CIP. So 1 year. So just in this year, there were things that were actually being addressed outside of the COVID pandemic, outside of working on the CDP, and outside of your normal day-to-day job as the Planning Commission, which is reviewing applications and making recommendations. So in all, during that time frame of the reporting period, the city was doing quite a bit. Also during this report, they asked us about legislation. So there has been 4 new ordinances that are related to, in a certain way, to zoning or process. The gross floor area was completed, underground parking ordinance was completed, wireless communications facilities ordinance, and then the ability to take paper and digital format for plan reviews and applications. So we reported new zoning legislation to the state as well. And the next one is completed projects outside of the CDP. Rock recycling containers. It was completed the summer of 2020, which was, they received a grant for containers along the boardwalk to promote recycling. And as most people are familiar with, the Lake Avenue Streetscape Phase 2, which really focused on pedestrian safe connectivity, ADA, drainage, and stormwater. There was multiple intersections there, and that work was completed the spring of 2021 for Phase 2. And the next one is new projects underway. I'm sure everybody's familiar. I think Commissioner Strange has been involved in this as well, is the Wilmington-Baltimore Avenue Streetscape Project. So basically, a task force was formed and with consultants, and they started the process in February of 2021. And recommendations were prepared for the city commissioners in April for those 5 bulleted areas on the presentation. And then future meetings will take place through the year to develop a recommended plan for the public consideration. So that is available on the city's website. Everything that I've actually given here has been available on the city's website for transparency. A large project is currently underway. Some more infrastructure information that's underway is there's actually a grant that was awarded to complete a feasibility study for upgrades to 3 of the wells in the city. The wastewater treatment plant capital improvement upgrade to Phase 2. So as we know, the wastewater treatment CIP project has multiple phases, which began in 2017. So in 19, they did the forest main and ocean outfall. And now the Phase 2 project will provide new power distribution and refurbishment of the headworks building. So these might be projects that aren't necessarily gotten through the Planning Commission, but they're projects that involved multiple funding agencies, multiple jurisdiction regulations, and address to meet the intent of the report moving forward, especially in infrastructure. So what we wanted to do is just provide you a courtesy to let you know this was the annual report that was signed by the mayor and submitted in June 28th. We assisted in preparing it with review from the Planning Commission chair as well. Any questions on that before I go into our update? All right, so on the mapping analysis outcome, this is the screen you've seen before. We are with 133 discrepancies. We're still doing the communication, and it's on a bi-weekly basis. But where we're at today is out of the 133, the 27 in the first phase that we sent to the county, they found 6 revisions. So they found in their records that 6 of the partial mapping discrepancies were correct with the records that Rehoboth had, and they are revising those. So I will be sending the details of that information and the parcel information to Max Hamby and to the building department, as well as Glenn McDallas. So 6 revised, which is great. That means that we're out of 27 of those, 21 were remaining, meaning the county feels that their records, their evidence, and the recorded plan information they have is accurate and correct. The burden of proof would be on a property owner or the city to prove how it is incorrect and wrong. They're working on right now is 22 of those. I think we're down to about 3/4 of those left. And that's what we're focusing on in this next month, or the middle of July. So the work with the county has been great. They've been really good at pulling documents and records. And I know that's not fun going to recorder of deeds when it can be done by city staff technically. So I do want to do a big shout out to the Sussex County GIS department for helping out with that information. And it's been great training for their new staff member, which is really good to have those relationships. The 24 beachfront properties, we are still leaving those out there right now because we know that's going to become more detailed work. We'll work with the county on a few that we know need to be changed. So that'll be ongoing. And as you're aware, the 41 lake properties is part of the DENREC project. So I'll be able to give you a better update on that in the August meeting because that project is being handled with Army Corps engineers and city staff. So that'll be moving alongside of our project as well. So we're at 19 resolved and corrected and adding the 6, and hopefully next week we will be through the majority of that phase 2. So they are working behind the scenes, and I think they've done a great job. And it is nice to know that the city brought to the forefront 6 properties that the county agreed with the documents and found the errors. So kudos to the city staff for pulling the information and the county for going back for the documents and making sure the recordations were done properly. And there wasn't a disconnect between recordation and mapping. So that is, I can tell you, a 20-year moving forward thought process between 2 jurisdictions, which is great. And that relationship is building. So we're still in the 4 phases of the mapping. We're doing the internal draft review and input. We're updating where we can and while we're waiting for the data. So we haven't changed anything in these other than the fact that we're now in July. So we're still on track. We're still doing, at the end of July is our cutoff. We are where we will be at the end of July. So once again, the county's working well with us. And we will rerun the maps, rerun the numbers, and start pulling that data into the plan itself. So that will take us to the July, August, as we've mentioned before. And this is the table you've seen multiple times where we're looking at having the rough draft complete plan to you by the end of August. We're still shooting for that target. So right now I don't see any obstructions to that. I will be sending this weekend some information to the city staff to give us some update on some data. But I do not see that being a delay, as I'm sure this will be a priority for city staff to return information. So once again, we're still on the schedule for phase 2 is the same, as well as phase 3 you've seen, which would give us to that public hearing process in May. We haven't changed these because this is what we sent to the state. So this is exactly the same thing you've seen every meeting. And then with phase 4, as you know, we have to be adopted by the end of July. We're targeting the end of June, beginning of July in the schedule. So with that, my next update that I have scheduled would be the August 13th Planning Commission meeting to give you an update on the project and then let you know when the official release date comes internally. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. That's a great presentation. The timeline is still on track with what we promised. Do you mind, or would you be comfortable talking for a minute about what happens more specifically at the end of this month? I mean, in those 5 categories we have, lakefront, oceanfront, resolve, those are closed matters that are going to be follow-up matters. And the first 2 categories, we're still working full speed ahead to resolve as many as possible, but we'll probably still have a handful left, but that will not hold us back at that point. Do I have it right?
That is correct. So they went through that first batch and the county went through detailed records of every single one of them, from the deeds, the plot plans, everything they have on the county records that are legal and have been recorded. They went through all the information and they QAQC'd everything, and they found 6 out of those 22 that needed to be resolved, rectified, and processed through mapping and updated. So the rest of those, we are going to use the county's data unless the city has any kind of information. We were cutting it off to say, we gave the city 9 months or 6 months to find data and get the data. We cut that period off. Then we give the county so long to do their data, and then we're going to go with the information that the county has. And I think that was agreed upon within the team. So there will not be a delay on the mapping as these last ones we're getting out. The only change we would have is if the lakefront project gets done prior to December, and it didn't change things drastically. So by drastically, I mean, the only things that would change, our zoning is not going to change. The things that would change would be acreage and parcels. So when we see you have this many acres or this many parcels of this type of zoning or this type of land use, that could change minorly around the lake, but it's predominantly, I think, if not all, residential. So I don't envision there to be any changes after July. I'm not sure if the two projects will be on the same track, but we have everybody's buy-in from the state to the city officials, as well as our internal department to cut it off in July and move forward. And with the disclaimer in the plan about the mapping, because it's static for that day. So for example, you have a parcel split today that you're considering. If that was adopted today, the applicant then takes it to the county with the signed paperwork to get it recorded. Recorded prior to a building permit would be great, because then we wouldn't be in these situations again. So if it's recorded properly prior to the building permit, then the nicest part about that is our maps are already going to be old, because it's a static shot of what you have today. So it'll show the acreage, it'll show the type of use, it just won't show the split out. And those will be caught up when your maps are updated. So we'll have the reference to the state and the county's websites. So that's the information and the data that the county should, or the city should be using in decision making. Yes.
Super. That's very helpful. And I'm really happy that everybody is cooperating and accelerating as much as they can their progress. So it's been difficult to find bandwidth. I'm glad that's happening. I'd like to go to the Planning Commission next with questions or comments, but I'm also going to use the chair prerogative and see if any of the public wants to say anything, since I see Mr. Perry and he may or may want to say something later. So just prepare yourself. So PC, questions for Debbie or general questions about CDP? I see Mr. Ellison and then Mr. Covington.
Debbie, if I read the schedule correctly, the PC and staff received the first draft of the full report at the end of August, and our comments are due on September 1. Can you explain that?
It's the middle of September. We don't have any dates at the end of each month. So we have the first draft being done the middle of September, and we all agreed that we're going to have to make that crunch time. I'd like to be able to give you 2 to 3 weeks. So we thought 3 weeks being the maximum period to be able to get that review done. But there is not a hard date. It's not September 1st. So if I can get it further, the furthest we can get for the window for you is what we'll do within that schedule. Not to push the rest of it over. We run into a little problem in November and December, which doesn't help anybody because of the holidays.
Anything else, Mr. Ellison?
No, that answers the
Sorry.
question.
Thank you. I was wondering the same thing. So appreciate you asking that. Mr. Covington?
Yeah, I was just basically the same question. I wanted her to define internal review. I didn't know if it was internal to her company or if we're part of the internal review, but it sounds like we are part of the internal review, and we'll have a couple of weeks to look that over. Is that right?
That's correct. So we will be doing it internally, KCI, in the month of beginning of August, and release it at the end of August. And that internal review would be planning commission members and city staff. Once we feel the comfort level there, we then release it to the Board of Commissioners to be able to make comments before it gets to the public. And the public is scheduled in, I believe, January, because the holiday months really hurt public outreach.
Other hands? Other questions from the PC? Max, could we go to Mr. Perry to see if he'd like to say anything about the CDP? Mr. Perry?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I don't really have much to say, but I am happy to see that the CDP is once again moving forward. And as Debbie said, I'm glad to see that everyone is cooperating, to make this happen. So good job, and let's keep it moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Perry. I assume nobody else in the public wants to speak on this matter, but I'll ask just in case. that would be Mr. Dukes, Ms. Gaddy, or Ms. Davis. Okay, I think we're good there. So that closes that matter. Let's move on to
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm sorry, I should say thank you again.
No, you're fine. Thank you. Have a good night.
We appreciate you joining us, and we heard no background noise. It was great.
Great. Thank you. Have a great meeting.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, item B. So the next item is our public hearing of minor subdivision application number 0521-02 for the Lake Avenue properties. As everybody knows, we had the preliminary evaluation at the June 11th meeting. Following 236.3, we decided that the application was substantially complete and could proceed to public hearing today. Ms. Womack did all the proper public noticing, which we heard about to that point, and we are ready to continue. I've asked Mr. Bryan if he would conduct this item today, since he's the new vice chair. We want to give him the pleasure and practice of doing so. Thank you for doing it. And I'll hand it over to him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll start with the applicant presentation. Mr. Dukes, are you online? Mr. Dukes?
Can you hear us?
Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Hal Duke.
Will, I'm listening to the planning commission meeting.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dukes. We had to mute someone. If you'll start over, that was partially my fault.
Okay, this is Hal Dukes and Alexis Gaddy on behalf of our applicants. And our applicant is PNSDE-Lakeside LLC. Now that's a Delaware limited liability company that's owned by Peter A. Davis and Susan C. Davis. They have a property at 35 Maryland Avenue, but they also live in Seattle, Washington. They're presently in Montana with their minor league baseball team. They own a baseball team. Peter and Susan purchased the 3 lots some time ago, at which point there was 3 structures on those properties. And when they investigated, they found there's a lot of lead paint and a lot of challenges on these buildings, and they felt it was best just to dismantle the properties. They did so. And in the course of events, they now have decided they'd like to go ahead and have more open space in Rehoboth. So they'd like to have the 50 by 100 foot lots, and there's 3 of them, divided into 2 lots, to just have 2 lots, 75 feet by 100 feet. Susan wants more green space. She wants a first floor bedroom to accommodate a family member who's got limited mobility. I might point out that these sites are commercial, but the plan is to actually do residential on these sites. They're planning 2 homes eventually, one on each of the 75 or 100 foot lots. The homes have been designed by a firm of Hughes Studio Architects in Seattle, Washington. I might point out the 3 previous structures had active rental licenses, but of course that would be reissued if the homes ever were rented. I understand from Peter and Susan that they plan to at least keep one of them for family use. That's about all we have to say. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Dukes, this is Mike Bryan. Do you have available, and can you submit a plat? There is a plat that was made part of the application package. It's called a minor subdivision plan of parcels such and such and such and such, prepared by Donald P. Sweeney. But when I look at it, I don't, and maybe the font size is just too small. It would be nice to have a plat that actually sets forth the actual square footage of each of the 2 lots that you are seeking to create. Do you
I think if you look at the plat, I think it would show that it's 7,500 square feet each.
exactly 7,500 square feet? 'Cause
Well, if you have three lots, and you're 15,000 square feet, and these are divided exactly in half by the engineer. If you look on that, you'll see that 1/2 of 15,000 is 7,500.
Well, the problem I have is in the application package, I see a reference to creating a lot containing 7,496 square feet and a second lot containing 7,634 square feet, which are different from the number that you had just suggested.
Well, in your package, you have the plots. I guess maybe you have the better numbers than I do. I don't have the plot in front of me. I'll open it up here.
Okay, the point of my inquiry, sir, is do you have a plot that has these, that shows dimensionally shows what each of these lots contains as far as square footage, so that it's clear it complies with the Rehoboth Beach Code? And if you don't have the plat, could you please submit one?
And let's see what we've got here. All three lots. I've got the lots scheduled, actually there's a few inches bigger, in the plot that we submitted was a 75.16. I guess that's an inch and a half by 98.84. If you recall from your studies, that particular property, when Morgan Gum did the survey in 1926, he kind of tilted a little bit. And so a lot of the lots aren't exactly 50 by 100. But there is a ordinance that says it's de minimis difference. It's not going to affect the subdivision process.
Yes, sir, I understand that. It's just that I believe the resolution for this property should include, this application should include a requirement that the resolution be recorded among the land records, which would include a plat. And so
well, that will be on approval of the city of Rehoboth. We can't record it without your stamp.
Yes, sir. I keep coming back to, I'm simply trying to get a copy of a plat that shows the dimensions of these two lots as proposed. That's all, sir.
That's actually in your package. I'm holding it from your package in my hand now.
Okay. I am not able to, what I see does not have the dimensional square footage.
Well, my plot that I took from your package shows 75.15 and 75.15 for each lot. And then the depth, of course, is 98.84. And then the interior line between the two lots is 100.76 feet. And then over by, I guess you call it, Fran O'Brien's old property, that would be 102 by 50 square feet, by 102.50 square feet.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Right.
Mr. Dukes, if I may, I stand corrected by counsel. There is a note on your plat. It's not shown on the actual drawing itself. There is a note on the plat that does give the square footage calculation of proposed parcel A and proposed parcel B, and those are the same square footages that I had asked you about earlier. So I think we're good, sir, from that perspective. Thank you. Any other members of the PC, please, have any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Bryant,
Yes, sir. Mr. Kaufman.
I believe we need a certified plat to prove this. So is this plat certified by an engineer? We need a plat that is recordable and shows the dimensions by a certified engineer. If we don't have that, we may have to continue this until we get one.
The plat that's here is made part of the packet, has been signed by Donald Sweeney, a registered professional land surveyor. It would have to be signed by the owners and signed by the planning commission before it could be recorded. So I do see something here that may well fit that if the applicant can help us and assist us by getting the owners to sign the plat if this approval is granted. But that would be necessary before we could record it.
The drawing, generally, the way I've done this in the last number of years with you folks, you all pass on the approval and then you put a requirement in there that the official certified plat be drafted and signed, and then I take it up to whoever it is at the planning commission and they sign off, and I get my clients to sign off. And then we take it to the recorder deeds office and we actually get it stamped over to the recorder deeds office. And then what I do is I bring one back from the recorder deeds office and give it to Ann for the official files. In this case, we have two because we have two lots. But I can't do anything until you guys have a vote.
Yeah, I'll be glad to ask that the motion to approve or disapprove, whatever motion it is, that motion include a requirement that the official certified plat be signed and duly recorded. So thank you, sir. Anybody else? Okay. Having no further comments at this point, I would open the public hearing in order to consider this matter. Of anyone on the sign-up list, Alexis Gotti or Susan Crampton Davis, or anyone else who happens to be online, Mr. Perry, wish to speak concerning this matter?
This is Alexis Gotti. I'm sitting here with Mr. Dukes. I have nothing to add to his presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, hearing nothing, no one else, we'll close the public hearing. Could we have our planning commission discussion and deliberation, please? Does anyone have any thoughts they'd like to share with the group? Mr. Strange.
Yes. This is the first time on the committee, my 9 years on the commission, where we've actually had an upzoning occur, and I think it's rather nice. That's it.
All right, sir. Anyone else? Okay, there being nothing further, is there a motion? Can I have the general sense of what the commission would like to do, and we can present a motion for consideration. Can I ask first, is anyone here opposed to this particular application? If seeing none, I'd ask if you would consider a resolution that at the conclusion of the public hearing, upon motion duly made and seconded, unanimously resolved to approve the minor subdivision application number 0521-02 for the property located in the C3 zoning district, lot number 63, which is TMP 334-14.17-69.00, 65 TMP 334-14.17-68.00, and 67 TMP 334-1417.6801 along Lake Avenue. The boundaries of lots 63, 65, and 67 shall be adjusted so as to create that certain lot containing 7,496 square feet and that certain lot containing 7,634 square feet. The resolution would include a finding that the application complies with the requirements of Chapter 270 of the Rehoboth Beach Municipal Code, and further would be conditioned on there being no building permit for these adjusted parcels to be issued unless and until a copy of this resolution is recorded among the land records of Sussex County, Delaware, and that the official certified plat be duly signed, executed, and approved, and recorded among the land records of Sussex County, Delaware. Mr. Secretary, would you please call the roll for a vote?
Well, first of all, you have to have a second to it, right?
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that.
And and then comments. The square footage you mentioned seemed different than what Mr. Dukes said. I'm confused about that.
From what I see, and from the plat that I've now located in the packet here, the notes to the plat, what Mr. Dukes talked about was different. But the certified plat itself does give the square footage requirements that I had referenced in the motion. So
Okay.
I think that has been resolved appropriately.
Okay.
And if I can add, it's a big, huge piece of paper that we can actually read here in the room.
Yeah. It's 24 by 36.
Good.
And again, it's a conditional resolution that the plat must be recorded, the resolution must be recorded, and all of this must be duly signed by the applicant before the resolution takes effect.
Okay, I'll make a second to your motion.
All right. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
And then maybe state some reasons why you're voting the way you're voting, and you can rely upon others' votes and the reasons they give.
Okay, thank you.
Roll call. Mr. Bryan?
Who?
Mr. Bryan.
Yes, chair votes aye. I find that the application and the dimensional requirements of these two lots as created complies with the municipal code of the city of Rehoboth, and therefore I think it's appropriate, provided that the conditions are met as set forth in the resolution.
Mr. Covington.
I vote for and adopt Mr. Bryan's comments.
Mr. Ellison.
I'm for adoption, and I will repeat Mr. Bryan's comments and also Mr. Strange's comments that it's very pleasurable to actually see an upzoning.
Hoffman.
Yes, and I will also adopt the previous comments.
Ms. Matcha.
Yes, and I also adopt previous comments.
Mr. Strange.
Yes, and I also adopt the previous comments.
Myself is a yes, and I adopt the previous comments. And Mr. Trunzo.
My vote is yes, and I adopt all the previous comments. Thank you.
All right, I believe the matter is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan.
Sure.
Well done. Our guests, we can thank our guests and excuse if you.
Yeah, if there are nothing else to be brought forward by any members here, we can certainly excuse you and thank you for your participation today. The next matter would be new business.
Okay, thanks everybody with Lake Avenue.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, so continuing on to new business. Number 7. Today we're going to discuss the engaging of a city planner. This is something that we've been working on for some time. We did preliminary work, circulating some documents, getting thoughts. The mayor and the city is ready to move ahead with engaging a city planner. We do have large projects in the pipeline, like 330 Rehoboth Avenue, for instance, and others that we've reviewed in the past and will be coming forward. And of course, we have the clear space experiences, all which sets the stage for the urgency with moving ahead with this matter. What we're being asked to do today within the public realm is to refine this document if it needs any more refinement, and pass it along to the Board of Commissioners and the city manager so that we can proceed along with other work that the city manager has done to prepare for the engagement of a consultant. So with that, the document has been amended to the agenda so the public can see it. I'd like to open it up to everyone and invite Mr. Weber to give us background, and perhaps if he wants to lead us in this part as to the compilation, that would be super as well. Mr. Weber?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Jeff mentioned, we have been working on a draft of called a position paper from the Planning Commission on the issue of hiring a city planner for the purpose of forwarding this to the city commissioners for their consideration. We've broken it down into a couple subcategories: the background, the current situation, the actual engagement of a professional planner, the implementation, and then some information on skills, knowledge, and background required. We've kind of gone through the background and the current situation. The engagement of a professional planner is basically a list of it's almost a job description type list with the type of skills that and type of issues we would envision the city planner addressing. And then we get into a little bit more specifics about the implementation. If you look at points there, you can see things like the cost of hiring planner that be assessed to the applicants. How do we develop a final job description? Who would this individual report to? The Planning Commission or both? Who kind of manages the city planner on a daily basis and prioritizes their time? Finally, how do we ensure that the planner is respected, engaged communities, and most important, and we talk about very specific kind of educational background and knowledge type things that we might be looking for with this individual. So with that, the document is in front of anybody. I think I'd like to open it up to the Planning Commission to see what individuals, what additional thoughts they might have on the document and things that maybe could be included or excluded as the case may be. And once we get some feedback from the Planning Commission, we will.
Lee, if I could ask you just to repeat maybe your last two sentences you count out. I heard once we get feedback, and then it stopped.
Oh, once we get feedback from the Planning Commission, then we will open it up to public comment to see what thoughts the public has.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So with that, does anybody have any Planning Commission members have any additional thoughts, or as I mentioned, inclusions, exclusions, etc.?
I had a thought. I'm sorry. I probably shouldn't have gone first. Maybe, go ahead, Lee. Call on whoever you want.
Oh, Mike?
No, that's fine, Jeff, if you want to go ahead. But I think you guys did a great job on it. And aside from a few grammatical and a couple of strange things that showed up in the spelling, I think it's an excellent document. And it's as you pointed out, I mean, it was cool. We needed this 10 years ago. And now we're rushing to get it filled. And I think it's critically important. And one of the things that I was unclear of, it's unrelated to the work that you did, but going back, I guess about a month ago, the city manager indicated that they were in process of moving ahead on this, but I may have been confused. Are they already in the process of looking at resumes, or they're still in a holding pattern waiting for this document from us to go further?
Can I address that?
Yes, Jeff, can you?
Sure. So I can shed some light on that. I know that the city manager has been doing preparatory work, making sure there's money in the budget. She's certainly in favor of doing this. She has been gathering job descriptions from other municipalities, networking with planners, looking for referrals, that sort of thing. I am meeting with her in this coming week. I believe it's going to be Tuesday, to talk about I guess I should say engagement, because I'm not really sure it will be a hiring event. And I'll learn more information at that point in time. But the mayor's instruction to me and to her, as far as I understand, has been to move ahead as rapidly as possible with a high quality hire and engage them in whatever way is possible, particularly since we know that Bellhaven is active, and of course we have 330 Rehoboth that is active, and those are exactly the type of projects where a planner is needed. So he intends for a planner to be engaged ASAP.
Okay.
And I guess I should say I will have some influence over the process, but I don't know how much. And of course, I will consult with you if I feel like we need more input. Go ahead, Lee. You can continue to call on people if you're comfortable.
Barry?
Yeah. Is this person going to be a consultant or a full-time employee of Rehoboth Beach?
My best guess right now is that they would be engaged as a consultant first on a project-by-project basis. Although I have, you'll note that it's called a city planner. The mayor has said that deliberately, a city planner. And that raises some issues that I was going to speak about first. It certainly, as a consultant to the planning commissioner, is an immediate need for large commercial projects. But you heard our CDP process, and I took a note here. Recordation and mapping, is a job that requires a skill set and a set of eyes that would help us with the CDP. We wouldn't be in this position if we had more oversight or perhaps more engagement about the importance of that topic. So that was one topic I was going to recommend. May not be an immediate need, or it may be an immediate need, I don't know, but there's lots of ways that this consultant could get engaged in the city operations to make development site review plans work better.
Ms. Matcha?
I know we're thinking this is kind of a part-time or consultancy type position, but based on what we're putting forth and what it sounds like we have other needs around, I mean, don't we all think this really could be a full-time role?
Yes.
I don't know if that's an option, but Jeff, when you speak with the city manager, I think that's a question, to them also.
All right, I will raise that. I certainly feel that this person should be doing lots of things. Liaisoning, the liaison to the developer, the person that's able to take our questions and translate them back and forth, even, just everything a planner does. It would be, I think it would be better for the city in the process to have a point person other than building and licensing. They are the point people now, and they do a great job, but their scope is more limited than what the residents want to see planning and development look like.
Hoffman?
Yeah, I agree that with the last comments. We need a full-time person, but it could also be a full-time consultant company that is retained on a semi-annual or annual basis with a devoted team of planners from the consultant. It's a budgetary issue as well. So it may be that we could get a full-time individual, but it may also be even better if we got a good land planning and architectural firm that had a team of people and we retain them on an annual or semi-annual basis. And by the way, I was, as Mike Strange said, I'm very happy with the document as it's currently drafted.
Mr. Strange?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Lee. Yeah, I agree with Stephen. That is an option to take that approach. I think one of the things that's been particularly vexing for several years, and Glenn and I have talked about this several times in the past, is that by the time applicants come to us, it's too late. And then it becomes almost a fight in many cases, and that many of the things that come up are things that could have been looked at and considered by the applicant way, way in advance. And there's only one really good example in the last 9 years that I've been on the committee that shows where there was preliminary work done, and we in fact at that point had a part-time planner that was assigned to us, was with regard to the Avenue project. And Glenn may even remember that. And they started out with a sketch review before they had invested a ton of money into the final design. And we're looking at various options, and they presented to us and said, well, here's what's required under the code, and here's what's required by the building inspector. But we really think it's a pretty lousy plan, and we'd really rather do this, which would require a whole series of them going to the Board of Adjustment. And when we looked over it several times and looked at what they really wanted to do, was the fact that it was more in keeping with what people wanted Rehoboth Beach to be than the plan was that they would have to submit, quote, to be code compliant. And to use the phrase I've used several times, instead of being a swan, if you followed the code, it would end up being a platypus and damn ugly. So they came to us, and we were able to effect change, and we supported them when they went to the Board of Adjustment to make those changes. But it would have been nice in the normal course of things, which we can't do under the law, because it's quite frankly puts us in a bind, which is one is advised, that applicants can't come to us individually or collectively to talk about these kind of things, even though there's a tremendous amount of horsepower on this committee that would be beneficial to the applicant and to the city. It has to be done in the current way in which it's done. So in order to alleviate the legal problems, we really do need a planner, whether it's in the form of a full-time availability of a consultancy or an actual individual who is hired by the city, in order to make decisions that are reflective of where we want the city to be. And I would just make one sort of academic observation, is if you look at several, and I'll only talk in terms of previous applications, I don't want to get in trouble with current ones that we have, is both the applicant will cite a specific chapter in the CDP as to why we should be allowed to do the particular thing they want to do. And then there'll be a series of people in the public who cite another specific chapter in the CDP that says why they can't do what they want to do. And you say, well, how's that possible if they're both looking at the CDP and they're quoting a chapter and they both come to different conclusions? And it's because, quite frankly, they're both wrong. And the reason that they're wrong is that it goes back to the old parable of the 5 blind men and the elephant. Everybody's looking at a particular aspect of the elephant. The guy who's looking at the trunk thinks it's a tree. The guy who's looking at the tusk says an elephant looks like a spear. The other guy who's looking at the trunk says it looks like a snake. And yet they're collectively wrong. And that's the problem we have had, because we're only allowed to look at an individual aspect of the city at one time and not look at it in the context of the entire city. And I think having a planner to work with applicants before they get way downstream and coming up with a design that now they're vested in and they fight like hell to defend it, even though it may not be in the best interest of the city. So I would vote for absolutely full steam ahead, Jeff, in communicating to the city the absolute need for a planner, whether it manifests itself as an individual hire or, as Stephen points out, hiring a consultancy that has skill sets that we can use. But it shouldn't be on a selective basis. It should be a full-time activity with all the things that roll in, not just those things that come before the PC, but as a general supportive assistive aid to the city. Because as you point out, the building inspector deals with code specifics, period. And they're not in a position, even though they may want to individually, to deal with the larger philosophical issues of the CDP, which is what we have to do. So I'll be quiet. Thank you.
Anyone else, any other PC members have anything to add?
Michael.
Mr. Bryan.
Yes, I absolutely agree with Commissioner Strange and Kaufman. I mean, these gentlemen are right on point. This is exactly what this group needs, and I think it will make our work more meaningful and better. So I would certainly encourage the city to move forward as fast as they can to hire a very capable and competent group.
What else? With that, then we would like to open it up to the public. So if any of the individuals that have signed up to speak are contemplating speaking on this issue, but if they would like, we'd love to hear from them.
Wonderful. Let's go to Mr. Perry.
I thank you again for recognizing me. I applaud you for moving forward with this very important position in the city. As you know, I have long supported the hiring of a city planner, either on a full-time, part-time, or consultant basis. Anything is better than what the city has now to fill such an important role. And I agree wholeheartedly with everything that Mike Strange said. I cannot say it better than he did. It's time that the Planning Commission has available to it the resources that it needs and requires, particularly given what the Planning Commission will be considering on a going forward basis. The number of development plans, that came up before us, even while I was chair of the Planning Commission, they're coming back. We all know it, and it's time for that person to be in place to fill that important role of working out issues and details before it lands in your lap in a public setting. That is critical in my view, and it is the best way to serve the citizens of this community. And will make the job of the Planning Commission and many others in the city's employ a lot easier. I say forge forward and hope you can get this accomplished quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. And I'll add on to everyone else's comments that I didn't hear anything that I disagree with. I feel strongly about this. Trying to negotiate with applicants in public is nearly impossible, and trying to find backdoor routes that are safe and meet all the requirements that we have to do is even more treacherous. So lots of unnecessary anxiety in my mind, because planning is a profession, and I think we have to have it. It has to be part of the process. So I'm grateful for everyone who's helping us. I see Mr. Covington hand.
Yes, Jeff, I agree with what everyone said, but let me raise a concern. And this comes from before, when members of the public have criticized, and I think it was a previous mayor and certain commissioners, from working individually to get things done. And there's a fair amount of criticism lodged against that body, if you will. I won't go into the entity that was involved in here, but nonetheless it was. So if we had this person negotiating with a person wanting to build a new building in town, are we opening a door for criticism by saying that we have a city employee that is helping someone get something accomplished, and it's not known to the public? It's just one-sided, and they don't really see the negotiation. Are we creating a problem for ourselves?
So I'd like people to comment on Mr. Covington's, but we've had this discussion before, and I think this is a very, very serious matter about what the guardrails are and what the threshold limits are about when something goes public. and what the planner can do versus process and administration, and when things bridge into, shall we say, the process that Mr. Strange was describing with the Avenue Inn, where negotiations or trade-offs begun. I think there needs to be a separation there. So Mr. Kaufman is waving his hand, and I'll stop there.
Yeah, I have a lot of experience with this. In most jurisdictions, if you have a full-time planning commission or a full-time planner, you have a situation where an applicant, prior to submission of any application, because once you submit an application, of course, you're subject to the rules, and you cannot have ex-parte conversations and so on. But an applicant, for example, the way it works in Montgomery County, Maryland, which I have most of my experience, an applicant could approach the chair of the planning commission and saying, we have a proposal which we'd like to present to your staff. And they can have a preliminary meeting with staff and just get some comments. It doesn't mean that, but what it helps is if you have a master plan, for example, that makes certain recommendations for an area or individual properties, it allows your professional staff, in this case, it would be the planner or the consultant firm, to give a potential applicant comments about what the city is looking for in an application. Once that is done, if an application is filed, then there would be a full public process. And all of this can be done in a transparent way. There would be, for example, on the agenda of the planning commission or in the office of the planner, a notice that this was going to occur, and then members of the public could actually ask if they could attend and be involved in this sort of a charrette process. That's done all over the country. I think it can be done in a successful way without the issue of people saying things are being done behind closed doors. I mean, it's something that would help a lot, as you know, if we had some idea, or an applicant had some idea of what the city is looking for before they put forth an application. We have to go through all these steps as we normally do. And one of the issues for us, of course, is we have certain limitations in our zoning code. And, even though you could have these discussions, unless your zoning code can be modified to accommodate these things, they'd still have to file in accordance with the zoning code. So that's just some thoughts on that issue.
Okay, Mr. Strange.
Yeah, I agree with Stephen. Both in New Jersey and in Delaware, when I was practicing, particularly at DelDOT, there was in fact meetings that took place between our planners that were not public. In fact, they were explicitly done on the basis of not making them public. But there were certain limits and structures, and those were guided by under the assigned Deputy Attorney General to us. And the same thing could be done here in Rehoboth. From the standpoint, as Stephen points out, it's a normal course in other jurisdictions where there is a city planner on staff, and he conveys to the applicants the various philosophies of the city and the CDP and other requisite documents, and it helps guide them. And applicants may come in, it's really fact-finding at both stages, and they may be advised that, well, this really doesn't make a lot of sense, or you can't do this. And the applicant may say, well, I really want to do it, and I think it'd be beneficial to the city. And they can take it one step further if they wish. But nothing is, what's done, quote, behind closed doors, as Stephen points out, is done completely legitimately. And when it shifts gears and starts to become public, it then moves over into our realm. And then you avoid some of the difficulties that Barry pointed out that may or may not have taken place in the past. I think it's one of the reasons the guidance from Glenn, it's been so difficult, because we see applications in the past that have come before us, and you feel so bad for the applicant. If they only had been able to speak with some of the folks on the Planning Commission, they could have had a better application. And that's really what it's all about, was doing what a better application is for the betterment of the city. And as everyone agrees, we've all had to sit sort of helpless on the sideline until it gets dumped in our lap. And then it ends up sometimes being a firefight. But yeah, I agree completely with Stephen's observations, and there's no reason why we couldn't do it here and be very effective.
I'd like to add to Mr. Strange's and Mr. Kaufman's comments that I think which may even promote having a full-time planner. Many jurisdictions have a comprehensive plan, CDP, that's much more detailed than what we're doing, where it goes down and looks at specific sites in the city and makes specific recommendations for those sites. Avenue, just as an example, for the purpose of this discussion, the comprehensive plan may look at that property and suggest that the parcels be consolidated and recommend that they be rezoned and recommend some type of massing on the site, and it can get into a lot of detail. And these are the kind of things that a city planner can do when they're not working in a specific case. They can work on being proactive and looking at some of the obvious redevelopment sites in the city and making recommendations for them. And it is a public process. The owner's involved, the public is involved. Nothing is approved until everybody has their input. But when it comes time for the property to be developed, there's a pretty good idea of what everybody's looking for. And as Mike suggested, it's a fire drill at that point. When everybody's rushing around and either supporting or not supporting the project. And wearing my hat is for over the years. I can't tell you how many meetings I've attended with planning staff to discuss properties well before we get before. And whether it be the director of planning or planning staff, jurisdictions, they have really good pulse on what the citizens are looking for and what the commission or the board of commissioners are looking for. And if they don't have a good pulse, they don't last long. And so they can be a very helpful asset in the process to give an applicant a very good idea of what the citizens' concerns are, what the planning commission or the board of commissioners' concerns might be. And so I think you find that the applications that come in are much closer to being approvable than what we're seeing now.
Right.
Very well said, Mr. Weber. And I think I'll say here that I want to draw attention to the experience of this particular planning commission. I'm constantly amazed and humbled by the folks we have who has extensive experience with site plan. I would suspect perhaps more than any other previous planning commission in composition. So time and time again, we see that this planning commission really has the good of the city and the good of the commercial zone and really wants to see the city developed and really understands how the process works, nuts and bolts, wheels and gears, and what a sound process should look like. So I'm very encouraged for the present and for the future of the city that things are going to work better with regard to commercial development. I'll step off my soapbox now.
Are there any other comments from the public that may have signed up? I unfortunately, I don't have a list of the speakers in front of me. Jeff, do you?
We have only Mr. Perry, and
okay.
He's spoken, but I'm happy to go back to him again if he wants to say anything, but I suspect he said everything. Mr. Perry, would you like to? He's probably stepped away. Oh, his microphone is open. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, I think I said everything that I intended to say, so I won't pick up anymore. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Perry. Do you want to propose a process forward? Do we have some we have some minor tweaks maybe to make, and this is ready to move along to the Board of Commissioners and City Manager. Mr. Covington, have we addressed in rough terms some of your concerns?
Yes, not necessarily my concerns. I just wanted to throw it out there because it all seemed so positive, and I just want to show the other side that could possibly come from this. But it seems like that from Mr. Coughlin's comments that that's not a problem. So. Yeah,
clearly zone updates, our description of site plan review, everything, this planner needs to be explicit in there. So it ultimately does require updates, of which, we're looking to light a firecracker under in terms of our area of the zoning code to get it updated. Thank you.
Covington, the only thing I'd add to your comments is through my experience that if the planner, as I mentioned earlier, gets out of their lane, my experience has been that they get pushed back into it very quickly. And that there's a lot of feedback from citizens, feedback from various commission members, and if anyone feels that they're off leash a bit, that they'll get put back in their place pretty quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with you, Lee.
My biggest concern is that whoever this person is, when they are put in place, is going to get pulled in so many different directions. And so I think wherever that reporting structure is, or the priorities that are given, we're going to have to really make sure, or the city will have to make sure that they're very focused on those priorities, because there's so much opportunity here for that type of resource.
That's true. And I think this role requires a lot of diplomacy to be successful.
And I'll ask the city solicitor if he wants to say anything about this topic or words to the wise.
Well, other than agreeing with a lot of what has been said about how the process works, I've seen it in a lot of jurisdictions where it does become a more efficient process because you do have those initial preliminary review meetings with the planner that work out kind of the kinks before it gets to the planning commission, and the planning commission is then able really to focus on the business of the planning commission rather than some of that lower level detail that should be worked out before the planning commission ever sees it. And I don't find anything untoward about that sort of a process. It happens all the time. I do think that the city, 10 years ago, it was moving into a kind of a new era, and we recognize the need for some additional help then. Certainly now, given what's in the pipeline for this planning commission, I couldn't agree more that some professional assistance is necessary.
Okay, thank you, sir. Did anyone else want to offer any final comments before we close this topic? Go ahead, Mr. Strange.
Yeah, if I may, Glenn, one of the things that, and I had voiced this earlier, that I was always flummoxed by the fact that because we do have such a wealth of capability on the Planning Commission, that we weren't able to legally to avoid any issues. The guidance has always been, don't talk to anybody about anything and wait till it comes to the public forum. But if the city does in fact hire a full-time planner, without divulging any particular application, the planner, I think, would be in the position to call on anybody who's a citizen, whether it's a member of the Planning Commission or anybody else in the city, if they have any particular special expertise in a given area where he can seek their opinion on a subject matter as opposed to a specific application. And I would think that in that case, Glenn, that would be an acceptable situation.
Yeah, I think so. When you're talking just general subject matter areas, absolutely, the planner can tap into resources, within City Hall and outside of City Hall.
Great, that's what I thought. I mean, it has been my experience where that was the case when I was at DelDOT, where we would do that, and in the case I would do it, and consult with people that were within other organizations of the state, but they were never told specifically what the particular applicant who it was or what it was, but it was just on a topic area to gain more experience and knowledge about it, to make use of it. And so the same thing could be done here. But I just wanted to make sure, and I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, Mr. Ellison,
He's muted.
you're still muted, sir.
Maybe that's why I've been quiet. I agree with a lot that's been said, but these last few comments, I've always thought of this planner as being really one giant step above it. We all get mired in a particular project. So does the building inspector. So does the BOA, if it goes there. And I've always thought that this provides, someone with the expertise of a whole field behind him or her, who really can step back one and say, this is a high level from which I'm giving perspective to this. I'm also giving it to the level of the CDP, as it's stated. I'm also talking about what I particularly believe are the best interests of the city. And I would hope that this individual would not necessarily get, so deeply embedded in the issues of one particular project that we're right back to where we are now. And I would hope that that's the way this will turn out. I think it certainly can.
Wonderful. Thanks for that comment. So what do you think, Lee? Have we heard from everyone? We have enough to finalize the document?
It sounds like it. I'll scrub it where there's no typos or grammatical errors, and I guess if you'd like, I can send it around one last time, or send it. I don't know how you want to transmit it.
I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think if we can have a general cleanup and check for everything we talked about, and give us all one more pass at it to make it as good as possible, and if we could get that done this week, it would be super helpful.
No problem.
Okay. I think we've covered that topic. Thanks, everybody. Shall we move on to number 8, old business? The first item under old business is the building inspector's report. And I see Mr. Janis is here. Can you join us, Mr. Janis?
Sure. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I noticed the report's not in the agenda, but it was emailed out. I haven't looked at it yet. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Fire away if you do, please.
In the meantime, is there anything of particular note you'd like to tell us about that was in the report? Or is it routine?
It's pretty routine at this point. We are, awaiting some upcoming submissions from our pretty popular projects. No word as of yet, and nothing has been provided to the department at this juncture. But we are eagerly anticipating, these submissions to come in and gearing up to do the review for them.
Okay, thank you. No questions, Mr. Janis? Okay, everyone's shaking their head no. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
The second update is me from the chair. I will ask the city solicitor if you would like to go first. You don't have to, and particularly clear space to sort of cue it up for me.
Yeah, sure. So my report is short. I happened to look at the Board of Commissioners meeting agenda, which was posted today for their meeting next Friday, and the written decision is on the agenda. It's not linked to the actual decision yet, but so I presume the Board of Commissioners will vote to adopt a written decision of ClearSpace, which will close out that round of appeals. I don't know exactly what ClearSpace's next steps are. I've spoken with their attorney about what they might do, whether it's a resubmittal or something else, but I anticipate them moving forward in some way relatively promptly. I think that the city commissioners having the written decision signed, allows them to make some decisions about which direction they want to go. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. Any questions for the solicitor? Okay.
Well, sorry,
Go ahead.
process question. So I know that when the appeals were done, there was a certain period of time that they had to make a decision on what they, were going to do. But in this case, if the applicant decides to do, something else as a next step, is there a time frame for them as well, either to go back to a new application or appeal it to the courts?
So any time period that would run would start from written decision. So no clock has started ticking yet. So Max Walton talked about a writ of certiorari, not really an appeal, but people call them an appeal. And I think that has, I want to say it's a 60-day window. I could be wrong about that, so nobody listening should rely upon that as legal advice. So that's one option for them, but there's no time limitations that I'm aware of upon them filing a new application for site plan review.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, so it's back to me. Updates from the chair. So I put this in here so I could talk a little bit about my overall perspective about where we are at this point in time and where I am. And I checked these comments with Mr. Mandelis to make sure I didn't speak out of line with everything that's going on. And he said I was basically okay. So what I want the public to know, and all of you know some of this, I've shared it already, and some of it is new information. So I was online for the entire June 30th, 2021 Board of Commissioner hearing, in which they ultimately decided to overturn the PC's approval of the site plan. It's routine. I get comments from, I get an inquiry from Chris Flood at the Cape Gazette after almost every planning commission meeting. And it's routine city procedure that I send those to the city's communication department. And sometimes we work together. Sometimes it gets triaged to people who make comments. But this time I felt that I wanted to respond myself and from the heart and with my own perspective and not through the lens of someone else. So I did respond. I did send comments back, which were published in the electronic version of the Cape Gazette article, not the print version. Unfortunately, I didn't make it quickly enough. But I did also send them immediately in the same time frame to the communication department, the mayor, and the city manager to let them know that I was breaking protocol and that they would have the information should they need it for anything more than they want to say. I believe I circulated this to everybody, but I wanted to read it for the public. So here's what I said. The mayor and board of commissioners recognized at the conclusion of the hearing that there are structural and procedural impediments to conducting a comprehensive site plan review. There is broad agreement that there is an urgent need for a city planner and a comprehensive update to the city code. I have championed those priorities while chair, and if the city acts quickly to invest in these tools and people, then the residents' faith in site plan review will be restored. And I want to emphasize those last remarks because we're here for a number of reasons, but I think the entire community needs to be reassured that site plan review has integrity. I think it does. I think when we make some investments, more people will feel that way, or at least it will be more transparent and there'll be more resources. But right now, the situation is very difficult in terms of what we will hear back from folks who don't agree with our decision. So I think the time has come, as Mr. Mandela said, about 10 years ago, the city was on the cusp of changes. Changes were made, but we need to make more investments for all the reasons we talked about already. So that's the first part. So you also may have heard several members of the Board of Commissioners state at the end of the meeting that, at the end of the June 30th hearing, that they thought there would be Planning Commission resignations. I thought that being found arbitrary and capricious does not describe the PC's group behavior or the behavior of any individual. I know many attorneys in the community have a lot of trouble with those words, and they think it's a very high bar. I did not take them personally, but I have to admit that they do hurt, and I don't think we did that, and there could be disagreement about that matter. But it's a term of art, and you know that's what we have in our appeal process. At that point, shortly thereafter, I did decide to make an offer to step aside as chair to make way for new leadership, because I felt that the Board of Commissioners was signaling that they did not have faith in the current PC officers. So to jump ahead, that resignation did not happen. At this time, I remain as chair, and I intend to complete my term, which ends this fall, sometime the end of my third-year term, as with two other folks, is at the end of this year, whenever new commissioners are named. However, I'm getting into the personal realm now. I do have many very rapidly developing and pivotal personal situations. I'll just give you an example of some of them. My parents now, who are in their 90s, both need care overnight, and my siblings and I are all rotating, spending time in Western Pennsylvania with them. We've promised them they could stay in their house, so the delivery time has arrived for what we're doing. I probably need shoulder surgery. So some people know through social media that I've had a rotator cuff injury, and I re-injured it after I miraculously cured it, and things don't look so good this time. So there is an issue of function and pain that I'm in at the present time. The big thing that happened very suddenly is that my Rehoboth residence of 30 years is on the market. There are no offers yet. I own it with 3 other people. The time has come to reconfigure. It's my intention to search for another property in the city and stay in the city. I don't know if I can do that sequentially. We are not closing on that property any earlier than September 30th. So I've made some inquiries, and I'm within legal bounds to stay on the Planning Commission. I'm thinking internally about whether, with one foot out the door on this property, if ethically it's where I want to be in terms of leadership position. So that's a big thing that will come into focus later this month as that develops. And I also have a very heavy workload at home with my regular job. So, you know, everybody has these challenges in their life too, but you know, there's a lot of stuff going on in preparation and day-to-day meetings with the city and everything. And I'm very conscientious, and I try to do my best, but I have been stressed by it, especially with developments that we had with this appeal. That was particularly stressful. So as you can see by the examples I gave you, I'm not the one totally in control of any of those outcomes. And I don't know what's going to happen in the near term over the next few months. I just can't control it. I'm not really sure. So in case, if something should happen that's beyond my control, that removes me from the Planning Commission, I want to read, for everyone's benefit, review the bylaws, which I have here. And when you go to 6B of the bylaws, vice chairperson, I'm looking at Mr. Bryan. So during the absence, disability, or disqualification of the chairperson, the vice chairperson shall exercise or perform all the duties and be subject to all the responsibilities of the chairperson. Next point, the vice chairperson shall succeed the chairperson if they vacate the office before their term is completed. The vice chairperson shall serve the unexpired term of the office vacated by the chairperson. A new vice chairperson shall be elected at the next regular meeting in the same manner as set above forth in section 5 of these bylaws, which means you would notice 15-day notice and have an election. I'd like to promise that I can stay on as chair, but I can't do that at this point in time. But it is my intention to continue just as we did today, with much more help from the vice chair and secretary, and just be as totally transparent with you and the public, and of course the mayor and city manager I've talked to as well. So whatever the events that happen, I'm fully committed to an orderly transition, and will work closely with the vice chair, Michael Bryan, who I think has excellent qualifications, would appreciate more time, and I was given excellent mentorship and development time by Mr. Perry, and I intend to follow that no matter what happens. So I will do all the work I can and make sure that that happens. I am not resigning at this time. I am still the chair. It's my intention to go forward as strongly as I can and to keep us going in this direction, at least until the term ends. That's my intention today. So that may have raised a lot of questions depending on how eloquent I was. I see Mr. Kaufman there.
Well, first, before I say what I'm about to say, I just want to commend you, Jeff, as our chair. I think you've been an excellent chair. I know that you've dealt with a lot of adversity, and I've, witnessed some of it as part of sort of a backstop with a few others on the planning commission for you. I want to make some comments on the clear space application. This may take a few minutes, but I feel it's necessary. And I feel it needs to be on the public record. As those of you who are attorneys,
Mr. Kaufman, the city solicitor wants to say something.
I know you know this, having had a former life in this role, but I just caution you, the application might come back, so be careful not to say anything that would prejudice your ability to participate in a future application.
I understand that, and that may happen, but I still feel these comments need to be made. And I fully understand that because of them in some way, I may have to recuse myself in the future if the application comes back. First of all, those of you who are attorneys on the Planning Commission, and also Mr. Strange, know that this is a site plan matter, which is a quasi-judicial proceeding. A quasi-judicial proceeding has a standard of proof of substantial evidence. And substantial evidence, if arrived at and agreed to by the Planning Commission members, makes their decision fairly debatable, even though there may be other evidence in the record, even a prominence of the record that is against that decision. But as long as there's substantial evidence in a record that the Planning Commission relies on, it becomes fairly debatable, and it is in no way arbitrary or capricious. And in this particular case, given the length of time that Clear Space and Spotlight have been in front of us, and that it's been 2 times that we've approved it, there is much more than a preponderance of the evidence in this case. And in this case, that is even above the substantial evidence requirement. I must say that I was very disappointed by the decision of the Board of Commissioners to overturn this board's very deliberate and careful consideration. I'm afraid that the outcome of this might ultimately cost the city a tremendous cultural asset, as Clear Space may in the end have no choice but to leave Rehoboth. And I'm very upset about that. And I think that would be a travesty for the city. Now, the Board of Commissioners relied on 4 primary points of evidence, or what they relied on, to overturn our decision. The first one was that the site plan before us wasn't complete, based upon the fact that a number of emails were not put into the record. Well, first of all, those emails were in the record in the sense that they were in the oral record. I don't believe it was necessary for them to actually physically be put into the record. Secondly, the Board of Commissioners found that for some reason, Clear Space and Spotlight was in some way an educational institution which required parking. Clear Space is not an educational, Spotlight is not an educational, it's primarily a rehearsal venue. And there are occasional classes, but any commercial property in Rehoboth, such as an art gallery or a restaurant, does give occasional classes, whether they're cooking classes or they're art classes, but they're not considered an educational institution. Thirdly, they said that we weren't secure in the square footage of the application. Two building inspectors had previously certified it as meeting the code. So it wasn't just once, it was twice. And the condition that we placed on it was just a belts and suspenders condition, which basically said, look, before you start building the thing, take a final look and make sure that the square footage meets the code. And thirdly, and lastly, that because of the square footage, because we might exceed the square footage, you needed parking. Well, this particular subject or classification for a theater in Rehoboth does not require parking. And so parking was not required. And because the square footage was certified twice by the building inspector, that's more than substantial evidence in the record to have it upheld. Lastly, and this is for me personally, there was a comment made by one of the commissioners that those of us on this board who voted for it did not have prior experience in considering site plans of this nature. And those of us on this board who voted against it did. Now, I can tell you, after 45 years as a practicing land use and municipal lawyer, and 2 years prior to that as assistant county attorney for Montgomery County, Maryland, which has one of the toughest zoning laws in the country, I feel that was a totally inappropriate, unnecessary, and unfair statement, and that should never have been made. That's pretty much all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. I don't think we want to have any response or add on to those comments. Thank you for making those. Is everybody okay if I move on to the next agenda item?
Well,
okay, Mr. Strange.
Yeah, just Jeff, based on your comments that you made, I think I speak on behalf of all the membership. We appreciate your leadership. We're sorry you're going through some of the difficulties that you have absolutely no control over at the moment. And at least for me personally, I will do whatever I can do within my limited capacity to be supportive in every way necessary outside of the meetings that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strange. I appreciate that. I've always felt supported by everyone here. And, you know, I think, you know, like any group of individuals, you know, everybody pulls together so that we all survive. And it's been a great thing. I felt supported all the time. Thanks. Ms. Macho? You're muted.
I apologize. I actually listened and participated, obviously, in the June 30th meeting, all 4.5 to 5 hours, as well as others on this commission. And I was really disappointed with some of the comments that were made by the mayor and commissioners. And I actually have a prepared statement I'd like to read as well. May I have a couple minutes?
I believe so. Mr. Mandelas, would you like to?
I'll just give you the same precaution that things you say here could potentially prejudice your ability to participate in a future resubmittal. So just with that precautionary, I know everybody has things they like to get off their chest, and I understand it, but I need to say, you know, give you that precautionary note.
You okay with that?
Thank you, Glenn. Okay, so here are my comments. There is no doubt in my mind that the two planning commissions that reviewed the Clear Space Theater project were experienced, dedicated, committed to a full and detailed review of this project, as well as the intent listeners to understand and represent the issues and concerns of all citizens of our city. Commissioner Susan Gay made a statement that the second vote on the Clear Space Theater review by the Planning Commission even went the other way, meaning more opposed and fewer in favor. The only real change for the 2021 review was the composition of the Planning Commission from the 2020 review. The mayor appointed 2 new Planning Commission members, both aligned with his Gay, Gossett, Legree views, and even one of his appointees, an experienced attorney, voted in favor, and I recused and could not vote. The caliber of talent on both commissions was equal. All were committed to review of project details and issues. The second review by the Planning Commission even had more legal, land use, urban training, planning experience in their background. 66%, 6 of the 9 Planning Commission members have legal, land use, or municipal urban training in their background during the 2019-2020 review of Clear Space Theater, 78% during the 2020-21. The current mayor and commission table doesn't have any legal land use background represented. I was incredibly disappointed when Commissioner Gay commented toward the Planning Commission at the June 30th, 21 Clear Space Theater hearing. She used adjectives such as surprised, shocked, distressed, when alleging gross errors during the Clear Space review process. These inflammatory comments portrayed the Planning Commission as incapable, uneducated, and misguided. She called out the chair for missing what she considered key process legal requirements on the project. Commissioners Gossett and Legree publicly discredited and erased the time, effort, and serious-mindedness and intense focus that both planning commissions exhibited to address, discuss, and debate in order to resolve the citizen issues on a project that was code compliant, or it wouldn't have come before the Planning Commission. If the mayor and commissioners didn't have confidence in the tenured city building inspector and his successor, they should have suggested or required a second review of the project. They didn't. They also remanded the project back to the Planning Commission for a second review instead of voting on it after the first approval. The mayor and commissioners didn't offer ideas, options to Clear Space. They should have been working with Clear Space over the 3 years to find a win-win solution. They just kept kicking the can down the road. It's unconscionable that our city leaders allowed this matter to fall into a legal and political game of football rather than recognize the Planning Commission did its job and did it well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Macha. At that point, I think we're done with that topic. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. And let's move on to item D, future Planning Commission meetings. We do have a meeting scheduled for October 13th, 2021. We discussed earlier that this will continue to be a virtual meeting. And I have not received any information that it cannot be. So does anybody have any concerns about that on the Planning Commission, or we'll continue virtually into August?
Virtual's fine.
All good? Okay, good.
And Jeff, are you saying, you said October, do you mean August?
Thank you. I meant August.
It makes a difference.
Yes, it certainly does. August 13th. Does anybody know if they have conflicts on the 13th?
I know that I do.
Okay. Yeah. Was that you too, Mr. Strange?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Oh, okay. Mr. Ellison, even if it's virtual still?
Yes, I'll be on the road.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, and then letter E, we'll go back to Ms. Womack. And are there any new applications that have been timely submitted?
Yes, there are.
Oh.
Bellhaven has submitted its site plan application and support documents this afternoon.
Who did?
The Papa John family for the Bellhaven Hotel project.
Thank you, Ms. Womack. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. So that particular submission, that is a process that the building inspector's office will now move forward with. We've talked about this in public before. So, you know, they are waiting, everyone's waiting for what FEMA is going to decide about the LOMAR. That is the administrative change that would allow them to build underground parking. I have not received any notification that has come in. So the application that's been submitted will be reviewed and determine whether it's accurate and complete and whether it can be forwarded to the Planning Commission. I have no information on that matter at this point in time. Is there anything else I should say about that, Glenn?
I don't think so.
Okay, good. Okay, thanks everybody. So are we ready to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Bryan has moved for adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. We are adjourned.